probably not used to that for an opening. Usually have the bird bell, but there's no bird bell over there. So obviously you can see that things are happening. And we hope that they're happening quickly. Thank you. Okay. Good morning. I'm just giving Bill a little time. Good morning, Bill. I didn't want to start without you sitting down. Okay, as we gather, we acknowledge the Nahantic and Mohegan people as the traditional caretakers of the land on which we worship. We honor and pay respect to the Nahantic and Mohegan ancestors and their lineage who today uphold traditional practices, art, and education. Today, we gather in this sacred space to hold sacred all the music we'll be presented with. We gather in community to hold up all of us at Unity Hall and those in the online pews. So welcome to All Souls, where all souls are welcome. You are joyfully called to worship. Okay, the opening hymn is 1018, Come and Go With Me. All right. It's our custom here at All Souls to greet each other warmly each Sunday. Please remember that we are still offering elbows. Let's all turn and wave to the folks in the online pews. Morning, online pews. We're glad you are with us today. If you're here for the first time, could you raise your hand so we can acknowledge you? Good morning, welcome, welcome. Those in our online pews, say hello in the chat. And if you're with us online for the first time, we'd love for you to introduce yourselves. At this time, we invite you to turn to each other to offer a greeting and message of peace with your hearts, your eyes, your smiles, and your voices. Each week, we light the chalice, symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. As Charlie lights our chalice, please say with me the chalice lighting words that are on the screen. Light this chalice is a symbol of our community and commitment to one another. This flame represents our life. Light this beacon of hope, truth. Okay. Each week we light a peace candle for some person or country that is struggling. And today we light the peace candle for all the places that are struggling due to climate change. Floods, heat, well up over 100 that humans really can't tolerate. And I don't know what the winter will bring, but we light this for climate. So, Charlie, and you gonna do it?
Go ahead.
No, I would rather that you said what you're gonna do.
Well, okay, I will. You can see the slide up there setting the stage, so that's what I'm going to do with this rather different service this morning. Ancient Greek mythology had among its many gods 9 muses, the goddesses of literature, science, and the arts. Euterpe, which means giver of pleasure, was the goddess of music. And she was charged to inspire, entertain, and amuse the gods of Olympus. Now, this art of the muses, music, is the most mysterious and intangible of all the arts. Mysterious that a succession of tones through time can have such a profound impact on mind and body. Intangible, because unlike the poet's words that remain on the page, or the painter's picture that remains on the canvas, musicians' pictures are painted on silence and gone. This morning, Bill and I will briefly explore the musical genre of jazz, its elements, its evolution, and its contributions to jazz theology. Jazz originated largely in the African American communities of New Orleans, with roots in blues, ragtime, folk, field hollers. And as most of you know, it's characterized by improvisation, syncopation, and calm, steady, or forceful rhythm. We'll have a number of readings about jazz theology, and Bill will explain and demonstrate several of the evolutions of jazz over time. Bill and I will also play a couple jazz standards together. These standards, the core of the jazz repertoire, are often referred to as the Great American Songbook. And we can see the evolution of jazz represented in that songbook. Many of these songs came from the Broadway and holiday musicals of the first half of the last century. To help you focus, what did I say? Well, they were having a holiday in Hollywood.
Never corrected somebody on the podium. That's
They were always having fun in those musicals, right?
I can't do that with Carolyn. I would never do that with Carolyn.
So we want you to focus your attention on the nature of music and jazz, of course, as you listen to it. So Bill is going to actually demonstrate some of the key elements of music. The first one being pitch, how high or low the notes are.
Pitch.
Now, the second one is much more interesting because this is harmony, how different combinations of multiple tones played together can create different feeling, a different emotional response. Tempo, which of course is how fast the tones are played through time. In case you didn't notice, that was from slow to fast. The next element is articulation. And this is how long or short or how connected all the tones are.
How long they last, how long the pitches last, and how do you hit them?
Dynamics, we're all familiar with that, how loud and soft you play, and it's used very dramatically within the song for emphasis.
Chopin's Prelude in C minor starts like this.
Oh,
Dynamic.
nice, nice. So those are some of the elements to heighten your awareness as we go through this. Now, jazz theology, the title of this service, has come to the fore because of the resonance between jazz and Unitarian Universalism. Several years ago on Sirius XM, Wynton Marsalis had a jazz program, which I tried to listen to every Saturday morning. In one of those sessions, he described jazz as the art form closest to human communication among equals. So the readings will address this communication and the engagement with others and the improvisational nature of it all. So why jazz music and not classical music? This is expressed very well in a quote by Brad Griffin, a minister with the Fuller Youth Institute, and I quote, "In a nutshell, classical music is formal, carefully structured, and finds its beauty in the accurate presenting of the original intentions of the composer. On the other hand, jazz is dynamic, improvisational, and finds its beauty in the soul of the performers and in the act of performance. Jazz theology is then participatory theology. It is concerned with the transformation of the soul and the impact of the communication, the performance of the message, especially among the lives of the oppressed," unquote. During the readings, between the readings, Bill is going to be playing 4 separate sets of examples of the evolution of jazz from one form to another, spanning from early until modern. And here's the first one, Bill.
Yes, hello everyone. Hi. I did want to, I'm going to speak shortly 4 different times. The first time will be the most because I'd like to define 2 terms for us all. The first one is jazz. And jazz, the word jazz is one of the most difficult terms to ever to describe, to define. So I looked it up a little bit this morning to make sure I had something interesting to say about that. And can I ask, does anyone speak or pronounce French here? Good. You are welcome here. Okay, so J-A-S-E-R, how do you pronounce that? Jésus. Yeah, see, we have the ZZ there. J-A-S-E-R, and it's a French word, and it basically means to chatter, to talk. Chatting, right? And there's also another definition that does make a lot of sense. Of course, the French in New Orleans, right? People spoke a lot of French, so that makes a lot of sense. Secondly, we have Jasmine, okay? And here's the, it was born out of New Orleans, and including, jasmine was a wonderful, strong scent to add to perfume. So brothels, ladies of the night would talk about, they would add jasmine to their perfume. That's another, jasmine, they jazz it up. They J-A-S, they would jazz it up. And it also meant to, and then later to just add things to things. Okay? So that is jazz. It's a funny word, but it's a very American word. And secondly, the second word I'd like to talk about is syncopation, because syncopation is everything. S-Y-N-C-O-P-A-T-I-O-N. And syncopation is magic. Now, as early as 14th century French classical music, French songs, there was syncopation. It wasn't really invented here. And what is it? Well, it's a rhythm against another rhythm, if I were to define it myself. One, you got a rhythm going, but then another instrument has another rhythm on top that seems to work. Now, let's see. I was going to mention a commonly understood way that syncopation really entered American music was the Wild West, the West. You know, of course, we have New Orleans, and we have trains. And picture the sound of the trains, right? You're in a train, you're in some boxcar with your guitar, or mandolin, or banjo, right? And one wheel's going steady, right? But the other wheel's going right? It doesn't make sense, but it makes sense. I was joking with Charlie. Can you imagine two fellas sitting there and maybe a couple hobos in the boxcar with a guitar, and they say, "Man, do you hear that?" Right? Yeah, that's bad. But it wasn't invented by anyone, just like jazz wasn't invented. Jazz is like Americans. It's an amalgamation of culture. So you have this thing. So I wanted to talk, if I thought I would try to describe in a nutshell, and forgive me all you academics out there and anybody, you know, this is going to be really brief. So I tried to figure out how to describe the evolution of jazz. And it does start in America. We had marches. We marched all the time. How European do you get, right? We have marches. And there were a lot of beautiful melodies. So in the first example, I'll demonstrate marches to ragtime, how that happened. The second one, rags to Dixieland and traditional, and boogie woogie, and then the addition of blues. Then from Dixieland to swing, early swing, then swing to modern. And how do I do this in like a 1-minute presentation for each one? I'm not sure, but I'll try. And first of all, in marches, we have just a straight beat, but they were beautiful tunes. They were beautiful melodies. And I said, well, how am I going to have people compare one style to another? Well, you have to pick one tune and stick with it, don't you? You can't just go to another tune. So, being New London, David Arnold, I thought I would use Semper Paratus. You got any more coasties here? Yeah, and and like a lot of American song form, the European, the classical song form, they're beautiful songs. I'll play it first if you play it slow enough, it's a gorgeous lullaby, right? Listen how pretty this is. Play it as simple as possible, a lot of these examples. Right, got that. Okay, so we have beauty, incredible beauty in the American song form, the European song form, which was brought over, by the way, through Appalachia. We have Ireland, England, those great French carols, and often played in folk music. So we have that. Now, here we go with marches, which are singularly simple and easy to motivate people to step with the band and go on a parade and get happy, right? We have... Right? Very simple, straightforward, and we could march to that, you know, right? Okay? Excuse me, there's a microphone here. So what happens? What happens with that? Well, very talented musicians of all colors, of course, played that stuff forever. They were in bands. What did horn players do? They played martial music. They were in bands. They were in parades. And certainly somewhere, many musicians said, you know, this is boring, man. Let's, you know, there was some kind of thing. Nobody invented it. Nobody invented any one thing in jazz. That's the beauty of it. It's so American. So you have the addition of the African tradition is having music for everything, not just the African American. In Africa, they had music for every event. Births, they had chants. Hollers, they just made music, and it was participatory, and it used syncopation this way. So here's the branch from Semper. Do you say Semper Par? They have Semper Fi. What is Semper, David? I don't know. Semper Paratus, always ready, right? Okay. So here is when musicians, maybe they started at home or jamming or playing these songs, and there's thousands of them, aren't there? Thousands of marches. I told you I was going to take a long time in this first one. The other three will be quick. So we have the syncopation of this. So listen to what imaginative people might have done to add rhythm, the little syncopated rhythms, not just boom, chup. That's not syncopation. No. Snore, right? Sort of not fun after a while if you just do marching music all the time, but how about where's the train tracks? What are those train wheels doing? Hey, Joe, listen to that. That's it. That's all syncopation is the accent on a weak beat. The strong beat being 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, very strong beat, you know. Okay, so we have That's America. That's America. And one of the best, finest jazz educators in the world, Dr. Billy Taylor, the late Dr. Billy Taylor, fine pianist too. He wrote my favorite book on jazz piano. It's called Jazz Piano, The History of Jazz. Can be defined through all the piano music. And he said, so I thought I'd look at his book, and I opened up the book and went to the first chapter and didn't get past the first sentence. You know what the first sentence is? No, I'm looking at it. Jazz is an American way of playing music. That's his first sentence, and I just stopped right there. I was like, okay. So American. Now I know universalism goes way back to Europe, of course. So that's sort of what I have to say there. And I think that's where it all started, because then the next demonstration is what we call traditional jazz, still in New Orleans, you know, and Memphis. traditional jazz. The next one is Ragtime to Dixieland. And that's my next talk. So there we go.
Thank you, Bill. Wow. Our first reading, over 15 years ago, in the UU World magazine, the former editor Tom Stites wrote a lead article entitled Jazz Theology, Improvisational Faith. He spoke to the widespread popularity of jazz in our UU congregations. Here's an excerpt. Perhaps jazz is finding greater expression in our congregations because it's such a deep metaphor for Unitarian Universalism. The music in this religion, not all religions, but our specific religion, resonate on a remarkable number of levels. One, at their cores, jazz and Unitarian Universalism are democratic in the broadest sense. Author and musician Tom Piazza writes in the Guide to Classical Recorded Jazz, and I quote, "In a jazz group, as in any community, certain roles need to be filled. Someone has to play the melody, someone has to keep time, someone has to suggest the harmonic content. In jazz, each instrumentalist has to understand his or her role in the group well enough so he or she can improvise on it and not just follow directions. Playing in a jazz group involves both responsibility and freedom. Freedom consists of understanding your responsibility well enough to act independently and still make the needed contribution to the group. As such, jazz performance is a working model of democracy." Unquote. Back to Tom Stites. Unitarian Universalist congregations are working models of democracy too. They answer to no authority higher than their membership and take responsibility for choosing their ministers, approving their budgets, and electing governor boards to oversee the congregation's business. Second, both jazz and Unitarian Universalism are inclusive rather than exclusive. Everybody is welcome. All souls are welcome. And everyone is welcome to improvise. In jazz, improvisation means spontaneous composition of music in the moment it's played. In Unitarian Universalism, it means that each of us must search for our own truth and meaning. And like jazz players, we draw from many sources of inspiration. And neither jazz nor Unitarian Universalism improvisation is for the weak of heart. It requires real courage to take responsibility for our own religious lives, both as individuals and as congregations. Third, when everyone is welcome to improvise, in jazz or in church, some dissonance is inevitable. Amen. People can tend to regard dissonance as grating and tension is bad, but dissonance can be holy. Liberal religion rests on the theological premise that by coming together with all of our differences, we summon the holy. That's because people who are responsible for their own truths always produce tension when trying to be in relationship. So being part of churches like ours challenges us to learn from each other as we work to resolve the tension and refine our truths. End of reading. Bill.
Thank you, Charlie. So I'll leave off where, I did mention the African tradition. They just had music for everything, and that's what happened with rags. Rags were played, rags, right? Nickname. And it, by the way, some folks should know ragtime means raggedy. The rhythm is ragged. Raggedy, ragtime. So that tradition worked with ragtime too. Americans used it for everything. Think of the Sting. Think of that era, right? Even earlier, where we used it for funerals and parties and weddings and celebration. We had ragtime music playing for a century. And the first published piece, ragtime piano piece, was 1896. And rags were generally instrumental music. No, people didn't really sing rags. And I was going to mention the blues tradition, which is other than, jazz, of course, is owned by Americans, but the blues is owned by the African American community. It really is. It's owned. Blues came from their desire to handle the oppression and stay together. And this was important. And we still do, don't we? We listen to this music. So we have Dixieland. Was the early swing, traditional swing called Dixieland. And it is Dixie, it's from the South. And I'll try to play the same piece with a little more Dixie, because in Dixieland you had participation of other musical instruments, the banjo, the trombone, the clarinet. Everybody can play together. Isn't that American too? So we have Semper Paratus, here we go. So you have different elements starting to happen. Semper Paratus in ragtime, it's pretty simple, But now in Dixieland, you've got participation. You've got the Americana. You've got that thing. Here we go. Wish me luck. Yeah, you got steady beats too. You have not just this. You have now, you have this a little bit. And that's sort of the early swing beat. So you hear different sounds. You hear they're improvising now. They're using scales and blue notes, flatted notes. Sorry. You have all those elements now, but you have making up stuff. Whereas ragtime, you could make it up. Those are mostly chordal things, okay? So, that's a short demo. I told you this one's going to be short. But Dixieland is again, a huge, happy bunch of music. And as a matter of fact, all the cool musicians, somewhere in the 50s and 60s in New York City, when jazz became really hip, we have hard bop and all this cool stuff. Somebody affectionately called Dixieland music happy jazz. See, you could see why that stuff was played at parties. Dixie, it just became that southern. Of course, it went to Kansas City and Chicago and New York City very quickly. But it started all there, and there's that happy jazz thing that really started the whole thing. Traditional jazz, Dixieland, and it was magical stuff. Now, check my notes, make sure I didn't miss anything. I'm winging it a little bit here. So there we go. Dixieland until the early 1900s, when it really became swing. I'll talk about that next. Swing music. How Dixie became swing, what does that mean? And there we go.
Thanks, Bill. I actually was in several groups in college, and one was a Dixieland group called the Southern Comforters. And we had the clarinet and the trombone and the trumpet, and it was great. Our second reading. This reading is an excerpt from an article on Jesus, Jazz, Buddhism, and Jazz Theology. How's that for a title? From the Reverend Dr. Monica Casaro, a Methodist minister. She uses the contrast between jazz music and pop music to illustrate her jazz theology. Here's the excerpt. Sometimes we listen to pop music, but ultimately we must turn to jazz because jazz, like life, is about engagement. I don't listen to jazz if it's too complicated, a friend of hers once said. I thought to myself, that really does explain it all, doesn't it? Jazz does demand engagement, and some in life would rather not engage. It doesn't matter what era you're talking about. Jazz, like life, is interactive, and that's what makes it so spiritual. Dixieland, funk, indie, Latin, modal, swing, cool, West Coast jazz, you name it. All of this demands that the listener be engaged with the live jazz. And in that engagement, we, the listener, become the jazz artist. It's all about engagement. And isn't that what life is all about? However, we do have the power to choose to engage or not. If life is to be truly lived, it must be done with engagement. Process thought teaches us how we can cope and live into life. Our past informs our present, and our present can guide our future. Here and now we are, to use the formal language, subjects in the act of becoming. As subjects, we really can't help creating ourselves. Every decision is an act of creation, every response. The presence of other people and the surrounding world, moment by moment, we are fellow musicians in the process. We are all on the same stage, and that stage is Earth itself. Life is full of struggles, and just like jazz, life needs to be lived always in ensemble, or in community. For it's in community we get to struggle together, and the struggle is easier. The true tragedy is when we, the artist, choose to leave the jazz ensemble and go it alone. Or worse yet, we begin to listen to pop music. Yes, pop music. Life does get complicated, and sometimes we need to have the comfort and the simplicity of a pop song. But we can't stay there long. It might seem comfortable for a while, but one thing is very clear, at least if we think in process terms. The process thought is that there's no staying in one place. You can't live your life singing the same notes over and over. There's a need for novelty or newness, and we ourselves are among those who create and discover that novelty. In short, we must play our songs too. We can't wait for that phone call. We must make that phone call. Some moments are chaotic, blaring, and loud, but stick with it. Jump back into the ensemble. It does get better. Stick with it. What was chaotic and blaring becomes a Latin beat that just makes you want to dance. Life is complicated with many voices. It can be a Latin rhythm with instrumental voices full of fun, delight, heat, passion, and dare say even bliss. The song can take you to ecstasy if you stay engaged. Take a chance. Take it to the end of the song. If you do, you will reside in the beautiful. And if you've got your ensemble players to back you up, you, the jazz artist, are never alone. That is, if you're engaged. End of the reading. Bill.
So if we have music, ragtime was instrumental, and from the, again, I can't mention the African tradition enough, because blues is from the African tradition, and the bending of notes and doing things with notes, bending or shouting. So you have a scale. Let me see, I picked the right key, because I'm going to try to demonstrate blues inflection in 2 seconds. So you have a scale, right? And you have the chromatic scale of every tone. Listen. Okay, that's not too high or low. You know, the perfect pitches all the way, right? But how about it go like this? Whoa. That's every pitch. Did you hear that? This is the bent note, the way you can just do anything. Why not? It's America. Whoa, whoa. That's blues. Is that blues? Yeah, that's not anywhere in any other music until the early, until America. So we have Dixie going into swing. Now this is fun, because the blues then really, although they certainly used the flatted notes. There we go. You know, there's what I'm demonstrating to you. So we have swing music, and of course this is in the 1930s. A saxophonist named Joe Garland wrote a great tune made popular by the Glenn Miller Band, and I'm going to play that in a minute. But remember the syncopation of ragtime. You've heard this. Listen to the syncopation in the melody here, and then try to imagine this piece of music without syncopation. Excuse me, that's not quite the way it was written, but the Maple Leaf Rag. So you have holy cow, how American is that? And you can play that rhythm without singing it to most musicians, especially jazz musicians. And they go, oh yeah, that's a maple leaf. Train tracks. Okay? So then we have Louis Armstrong, who was really elemental in bringing us from Dixieland to swing, I believe. And he really, I think, brought a lot of the blues to Dixieland and helped bring swing to us all. Louis was beautiful. Queens, lived in Queens. So he might start a blues tune by, here's the beginning of the tune, blues in F, right? Okay? But he might start it solo. He might go with the cornet. And there we are. But he was out front, and he was a great entertainer too, of course. And he was really out front with bringing the spirit to us. So, how do I swing, David? Semper Paratus. It's not hard, because swing, whereas we had Dixie, of course. Right? But what if you took those beats and made what if you made each of those strong beats cool? How do you do that? It's swing, and it's every beat. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, we have. Let's see. Might have to slow it down a bit to make this really work on Semper. Let's see. I did this. I know. I can remember. Swing music. So, yeah, you have this. move to that. That's right. Thank you, David. Right? Okay. That's right.
Okay, Bill, we're having so much fun here. It is now 5 minutes of 11. So I'm going to skip one reading.
I was afraid of that.
Yeah,
I would go on and on. I love this music. I'm sorry.
yeah, we could indefinitely. So I'm going to do a couple parts of 2 readings, then we'll get into the offertory and go on from there.
It's too much fun.
Okay. Another short excerpt from Tom Stites. One way or another, jazz hooks into everything that is American. Is a triumph of the American spirit in the highest order. Jazz arose from America's national sin, slavery. Slave traders did all they could to crush the culture of the people they brought from West Africa, but there was no way to prevent them from singing. As they were exposed to European music, usually in church, they adopted forms and harmonies to their own rhythms and inflections. Field hollers spawned spirituals and the blues and the various jazz forms and later rock and roll, rap, etc. You might say that the enslaved Africans and their descendants integrated European and African music into something uniquely American. And in that music, the results, you can hear both the joys and sorrows of the slave's experience. The spirit's triumphs, and what a contribution this has made to the world. Let me read a little from the last reading. The Reverend Suzanne Meyer, she was the former minister of the First Unitarian Church in St. Louis. She believed that jazz had a place in our worship, and the Unitarian Universalists need to get out of their heads more. She was thoroughly steeped in jazz and blues when she was the minister of the First Unitarian Universalist Church in New Orleans. And in that process, developed what she called blues theology in a series of lectures. To her, the music opened the way to that religious experience of transcendence and to the ecstatic. Here's a quick excerpt. I've known a few religious liberals who who express intellectual disdain for what they describe as emotional religion, and prefer to have their worship services resemble a polite book discussion group. She says, ironically, some of these same individuals are jazz fanatics who hold their CDs with the same level of awe and reverence which the priests hold their consecrated host. Their true religion, jazz, is anything but unemotional. We Westerners have a penchant for organizing the world into dualities, into either-or patterns of mutually exclusive options. If something is secular, it can't be spiritual. If something is sacred, well, it certainly can't contain earthy metaphors. If something is sensual or emotional, well, it can't be intellectual. And if music played in a barroom, then it unquestionably is unsuitable for church. Blues theology begins by shaking up this kind of dualistic thinking. Blues theology poses one question: what would happen if we were to embrace a more holistic realm of experience? What if we begin to experience the sacred through the profane? Timeless truths through the sensual experience in the existential moment. The first truth of the blues is that things are seldom either or. More often than not, theological truth is discovered hidden in seeming contradictions and in unorthodox combinations. Is it possible for us to speak of those things that we hold sacred? Freedom, reason, tolerance, justice, and use a different vocabulary, images, and metaphors? What if we were to search for and discover those same values in a completely different cultural context? Is it possible to gain a deeper appreciation for the universality of our faith by attempting to describe it through an entirely different set of metaphors? I will leave that to you to contemplate. That is the end of the reading. I think we ought to go right into the offertory.
Okay, this is the time in our service where we show our support for all souls through our generosity. Please repeat with me the words that are on the screen. We give to the work of all souls. Our work weaves the fabric of love called community. To this end, we dedicate ourselves and this our offering. Given and all that you have sacrificed. Each week, when we gather, one of the ways we tend to the fabric of our community is to bear witness to each other and each other's joys and sorrows. Those souls in the online pews, you may write in the YouTube chat what you would like to have shared. A reminder to please refrain from commenting so that I don't get too confused. And those of you in Unity Hall, you're invited to come forward to light a candle of intention as you are so moved. Those of you at the front, please move all the way up so that everything flows. If you have some mobility problems and wish to use the candles down here, they have another light so that you may light those. Circle is open Your joy and sorrow are welcome here. Okay, I think the only thing that we have in the live chat is Joel and Tina, healing thoughts for cousin Susan in Uruguay, who has congestive heart failure and is in the hospital at present. Hard to do that in another country. So join me in the spirit of prayer and silence and then meditation. Spirit of love and life, we welcome your presence into this sacred space. We give our attention and love to those struggling with illness or grief. We express our joy for those with new jobs or family members who are here. and we express our gratitude for music and for those making music, the music that helps to lift us up in this broken world. Amen. Okay. Okay, we're going to skip the last hymn. We'll extinguish the chalice. Please, the words are up here. Our service has ended, but our work is not yet done. May our spirits be renewed and our purpose resolved. The chalice flame is extinguished until once again ignited by the strength of our communion. The spirit that jazz embodies will never die as long as we can touch a button and begin again. At the beginning of Duke Ellington's Cocoa or John Coltrane's Crescent or Louis Armstrong's West End Blues, we will have proof that the individual and the group can be reconciled. That African and European cultural streams are compatible, and that the blues can be held at bay. And when the balance sheets are toted up for this country, let no one miss the sweet justice that the greatest artistic expression of the American ideal has come from the descendants of slaves who found the true meaning of democracy and the essence of freedom. To send our love and energy, can we raise our hands or put one hand over your heart? People in the online pews, put one hand over your heart and raise your hand. To send our love and energy, let's raise our arms. As we leave this sacred space, let us be the church which believes in and out of the world, bringing love to all who need it and energy to all who need to heal a broken heart. Leave in peace and return again with great joy. Amen. Okay. I'm going to go right to the announcements. Oh, okay.
I thought we're running late, and since jazz is party fun music, we're going to do the postlude, but you guys stand up and talk and have fun during the postlude. What? Okay. But we're going to, when we start playing, that's it. Have your imaginary coffee and have fun.
Looking for the announcements. Oh, if you're new today or new-ish and would like to learn more about All Souls and Newism, head to the welcome table over there, and a friendly soul named Lynn will greet you. One more volunteer is needed for the Pride event. This is 4 to 6 shift. See Maria Barais for more details or contact Tammy, the office administrator.
No, see me.
I'm sorry?
I tell you now, see me.
Okay, see Maria. All right, let's go to the postlude. Yay, as we have uncoffee.